David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Besides featuring pens and brands you're familiar with, I enjoy making new discoveries, new makers, new materials. I like to see things I didn't know existed. And today I have a pen to share with you from a maker, which is new to me, called Pens by Casey. And the model I have to share with you is made from a very interesting wood, and it is called the Mokuzai Enkei. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this eye-catching pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to Pens by Casey for providing this pen for review. The gentleman behind the brand is Casey Giddens. You can see here he doesn't take himself too seriously. He's based in Australia in a small town named Gisborne, which is about 45 minutes outside of Melbourne. I've never visited Australia, but it's someplace that I would really like to get to one day. I've read that several cities have kind of comparable vibes to cities in California like San Diego and San Francisco. Casey began making pens 4 years ago and has been successful enough that it is now what he does full time. He specializes in Australian and exotic timbers. He has other models like this one here where the wood is combined with a complementary resin. I think this model looks really nice, kind of like waves crashing up on a windswept sandy shore. Here's a look at some of the other wood and resin blanks he's created as well. Okay, let's take a look at the pen at hand. It arrives in this box with Casey's logo here and here as well. And inside we have a pen. This model is called the Mokuzai Enkei, which translates from Japanese as round wood. And appropriately, it is made from wood. This very interesting wood is called Northern Silky Oak. It's native to the Queensland, Australia area. I just really love the meandering paths of the grain. It kind of reminds me a bit of a bowl of spaghetti bolognese. Let me know in the comments below what this material reminds you of. The wood is rather light, and it isn't very dense, but it's hard enough that it shouldn't be susceptible to any damage. I'm not an expert on wood. This look was something I just really don't think I had seen before. And I really have a fondness for the unique, so I think this material is pretty cool. Casey does line the interior of the barrel with a thin layer of ebonite. This can help stabilize the wood and also make it less susceptible to damage which could be caused by the humidity changes which occur inside of a pen's barrel. Let's take a look at the parts and features of this pen. The top of the cap is rounded. I think it's interesting how when the wood is cut against the grain, it has more of a standard wood look, but then when it's cut with the grain, then it really brings out that artistic natural element of this material. The cap angles up just slightly at a fairly even rate of incline. This is a clipless pen. I think that was a good decision to leave a clip off of this pen. It would just break up the look of this wood. There's a medium-sized step down to the barrel, which tapers down. At the end here is a maker's mark, which is a C and a G for Casey's initials. And the end of the barrel is rounded. The cap twists off with 1.5 rotations, and underneath we have an interesting nib, which you might not have seen before. This is a cypress nib. This is manufactured in-house by the Taiwanese company Mr. Cypress. I've previously reviewed one of their eggshell pens that I just absolutely love. I believe that they have recently dropped the Mr. from their company name and just go by Cypress now. They make some amazing pens, but they have also begun to produce nibs as well. I like the looks of this nib. The two-tone banding and the heart are unique. I will say that the stamping of the company name could just be a little bit better. This is a very small nit to pick, but I would grade the stamping as a B. It's not terrible, but it could be better. I did notice the slit was ever so slightly off center in relation to the breathing hole, but it's not too egregious. I actually picked up 3 random pens in my collection from major manufacturers, and 2 of them had slits that were just slightly off center as well, just like this one. And here's a look at the plastic feed. Now, here's the section. I am really liking the section for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it's ebonite, and it is very slightly concave. Then on the back of this section, we have a little bonus pop of color. This material here is called Fordite, otherwise known as motor agate, which is a material with a pretty interesting story. You see, during the automotive manufacturing process back in the day, the cars were spray painted by hand. This practice resulted in a fair amount of overspray. The excess paint would gradually build up on the tracks and skids that the car frames were painted on. Over time, many colorful layers built up. These layers were hardened and repeatedly in ovens that basically baked them when the car bodies went in to cure to paint. Eventually, the paint buildup would become too thick and had to be removed. And some enterprising employees realized that the cured and hardened material could be easily polished and have many artistic uses. Here are a couple of other pens which were made by Casey from this unique material. Sadly, the painting techniques used which would create this byproduct are no longer used by the automotive industry. Now, cars are painted by way of an electrostatic process which essentially magnetizes the enamels to the car bodies and leaves very little overspray, or even none at all. But yeah, I think this is a pretty neat material, and I love objects with stories, so having a little story in your section is a cool thing. The section transitions into the cap threads and a medium-sized step up to the remainder of the barrel. I do like the feel of the ebonite feed in my hand. You can maintain a really solid grip on this pen. And as I mentioned earlier, the pen is more on the light side, but not so light that it feels off-putting. The cap is not designed to post, which is fine. I'm not a fan of posting wooden pens. You're at the risk of marking up or damaging the barrel, so that's fine. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges, and a converter is provided. Even with the ebonite lining on this barrel, eyedropping this pen is not recommended. If you eyedropper a wood pen, you're just asking for trouble. And I wouldn't want to risk anything staining this pen or having anything seep from the inside to ruin the overall look of this wood. Now, Casey sells his pens mainly through Instagram and Facebook. I'll put a link in the notes below where you can find him on Instagram. He mainly does custom work, but there are times when he makes his pens available on Instagram and Facebook, and they generally get snatched up rather quickly. This particular model here retails for roughly $250, depending on the currency exchange rate, which I feel is a reasonable price for a well-made, bespoke offering constructed with what I feel is a very unique and eye-catching material. I do hope that he gets a website soon so he could maybe have a better display and for his work and promote his work a little bit more. But I have enjoyed checking this one out. Okay, now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. So here we have the pens by Casey Mokuzai Enkei in the Northern Silky Oak. I wanted to give you another closer look at this just mesmerizing material, even getting closer. I just think this looks amazing. And in regard to some size comparisons with some other fantastic pens that are also made out of wood, this here is from Ryan Krusak, which is the Ebony Heartwood Sapwood. I just love how this black and white is split on this particular pen. Then a couple of other Ryan Krusak pens. He makes some amazing wood pens. We have the Legend 16, and this is in Cocobolo. And then we have the Legend 15, and this one is in a Honduras rosewood. And then in regard to some non-Krusak pens, we have a Conklin All-American, and that's made out of ebony wood. And then we have the Rockster Daydreamer, which is the maple burl. And then we have the Hebert pen company, which was made by Papier Plume or sold through Papier Plume. And this model is called the Wetland Cypress. In regard to uncapped comparisons, this is what it looks like with the Crusac Legend 16. It's fairly similar to that. And then here is the Rockster Daydreamer. And then here is the Conklin All-American. And before we write, I wanted to give you another look at that Fordite, if we can focus here. And I really like how some of the colors are more matte, and then you can see some of the more sparkly colors in there as well. So I just think that's a really unique and special material. And then in regard to a writing sample, we have the pens by Casey. And this is a broad stainless steel nib. And the ink that I'm using here is one of my favorite browns that I thought matched this pen well, which is Mont Blanc Toffee Brown. This is what Toffee Brown looks like. It's just a nice, solid, darker, kind of chocolatey brown. This is what it looks like with the Seyss-Kreuznach Chestnut Brown, as well as Bungbox Piano Mahogany, which is a little bit more on the red side. This is the bottle that I have of Toffee Brown. This is called Mont Blanc's shoe bottle, and as you can see, it is shaped like a shoe. And it's nice because then this ink little area over here acts as a reservoir, so when there's not as much ink, you can kind of tip it and it gets trapped in there. So it's an interesting design. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. X. I will say that this broad nib is more on the medium side of broad, almost like a Japanese broad, considering this is from a Taiwanese company. That isn't surprising. You're not going to get a lot of line variation out of here. But I would say that the ink flow on this one is particularly decent. In regard to reverse writing, oh, it's very smooth. And lays down a nice fine line. And then in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up very well. So there we have the Mokuzai Enkei by Pens by Casey. You know what? I didn't even say the name of the pen. I just said Pens by Casey. This is, let me see if I can do this without smearing anything. This is the Mokuzai, M-O-K-U-Z-A-I, and Enkei, E-N-K-E-I. So there we have this pen from Pens by Casey, the Mokuzai Enkei. I really like the material on that. I think it's something different and unique. So if you're looking to support an independent artisan, then this is something I would highly recommend checking out. And it was a fairly decent price as well. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.